May 10, 2008, the Blakeley Garrison flag made the final stages of a long journey on its way back to Baldwin County, Alabama. The last stage of the journey brought it back to Robertsdale, where it now hangs in the central Annex in Robertsdale on Palmer Street. The first stage of the journey took place on April 9, 1865, as it was captured by the 8th Illinois Infantry and carried back to Illinois, where it remained until this past year. The flag has since been returned to Baldwin County in a joint effort with the Illinois State National Guard, the Alabama State National Guard, and the Baldwin County Department of Archives and History. As a part of the agreement between the state of Illinois, the state of Alabama, and Baldwin County's Department of Archives and History, certain criteria had to be met in order to house the flag properly, to also conserve the flag in order to extend its viewability. What had to be done, first of all, the flag had to be conserved. As a means of conserving the flag, Baldwin County, Alabama, the Department of Archives, and the state of Illinois worked jointly to send the flag to a conservation facility in the state of New York, where the flag was conserved properly and then later transported to Baldwin County. Second among the criteria was the fact that the flag had to be displayed properly. It had to be maintained in an environmentally safe casing where the flag not only could be observed by the community, but would also be maintained in an environmentally stable condition. Some of the conservation techniques used at People's Island in New York included a gentle cleaning of the fabric using a very low vacuum source to pull any sort of dust particles, any sort of loose fibers, any inadvertent fibers that may have gotten on the flag over its lifespan out of the flag itself, removing any sort of potential for mold spores to grow in the flag. So very gentle vacuuming was used. The flag was then cleaned very gently with a light brushing. The fabric in the flag is so fragile that it took great care in order to clean it. But in order to ensure its lifespan, it had to be cleaned. Some of the techniques also included a gentle moistening of the flag to relax the fiber so it would fold back into place. Normally, flags over time will develop wrinkles from being folded or being rolled on their staff, and as a result, many times a conservator will have to use slight moisture, maybe a humidifier, in order to relax those fabrics to have the flag fall back into its natural shape. Some of those techniques were used at People's Island to ensure that the flag here was cared for properly, that it was put back into the best shape possible. In addition to the gentle cleaning of the flag, a stable flex backing was used on the flag itself. Now, what the backing does, it takes the pressure of supporting the flag itself off of the threads of the flag and puts it onto the backing. That ensures that the flag's fibers aren't stretched over time or contracted over time, putting more wear and tear on the flag itself. This allows us to hang the flag in the case that you see now without putting any real pressure on the fabric of the flag itself. The pressure, the weight, is actually on the stable flex. Once the Blakeley Garrison flag was conserved at People's Island, New York, the flag was then transported back to the archives facility here in Baldwin County in Bay Minette. In order to move the flag safely and carefully, it was wrapped in muslin sheets to buffer it from any kind of damage, any sort of dust, or any sort of mold or mildew, and it was then loaded into an environmentally stable van. It was brought back to Baldwin County and immediately put into the archives facility, where the environment there is kept at a relative humidity of around 47 to 50% and a constant temperature of 68 to 70 degrees. Those temperatures and that humidity setting made sure that the fabrics in the flag itself were kept stable. They weren't expanding and shrinking due to excessive moisture or excessive temperatures until the flag was then brought to the central annex in Robertsdale and displayed. The production of the case in which the flag now sits was in itself a monumental task. The case had to be built inside the building because the facility doesn't offer the opportunity to bring a 10-foot by 15-foot flag case in through the doorways. As a result, the case had to be designed, engineered, and the pieces had to be pre-cut and pre-assembled outside of the building to ensure that they fit properly, disassembled, brought back into the facility here in Robertsdale, and reassembled carefully in the auditorium of the Robertsdale Central Annex. The process took several days. The flag case itself is anchored into the building, as you can see, and it now houses the Blakeley Garrison flag in a stable environment, meaning that the humidity within the case is held at a level of 50% or so at all times. The temperature is also consistent within the case itself, which lends itself to giving the flag a longer lifespan, meaning that the fabric doesn't expand, it doesn't contract, which would put excessive wear and tear on the fabric itself. It's kept in a stable environment, and therefore it will be around for us to view for quite a long time. The front of the case itself is made out of double UV protected plexiglass. What this offers is protection from any light source, whether it's an indoor lighting or any inadvertent sunlight that might shine on the flag itself. The UV rays are blocked by the case itself. In addition to that, the case boasts a curtain which can be pulled in front of the flag itself when it's not being displayed. That also keeps light from affecting the flag, and therefore the colors of the flag will remain constant over its lifespan.
It all started about a year's long project. The history department, county history department, got to Mike Shipper and myself and asked if we could do a frame job for them. And after a lot of talking back and forth and looking at sketches, we finally got down to doing some engineering, and the flag at the time was in New York City. So Mike had to get in touch with the conservationist in New York City and New York State, and get specifics on the weight of the flag and the size of it and such as that. And then he brought the preliminary drawings out. We sat down and brainstormed the drawings and come up with a design and started building. It was quite a chore. We had to find products that would fit what we need, and that's kind of hard to do in South Alabama. So after a lot of hunting and searching on the internet and visiting different places, we finally was able to come up with the materials and start building. It was probably a 2-month process of putting this frame together. So after about a month or two of planning, we started the actual construction phase. It was quite a process because the flag is so big. The frame had to be 10 feet by 15 feet to house the flag, which meant we had to come up with some dimensional lumber that would fit that, also a place to put it together. And since this had not been done anywhere in the county before or in this area, it took a lot of brainstorming and engineering on Mike's part, and trial and error. We finally come up with a good design. We assembled it here on the floor, cut it out, put it together to make sure it would work, dry assembled it, and took it all apart, took it down to Robertsdale, put it back together on the wall, mounted the flag in it, sealed it up, and that's the story. It's probably a year and a half process, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of trial and error. Nothing like this had ever been done in this part of the country before. Mike, who's a professional framer for the last 20 or 30 years, had never seen anything of this magnitude done, so it was quite an achievement. We were awful proud of our work when we got through with it, and awful proud of the flag and being a part of it.
This really all began with my friends Donna Scruggs and George Smith and myself all being involved in history and getting to know the folks at the new archives. And really got interesting when we heard that the Fort Blakeley Garrison flag was going to be returned to Baldwin County, Alabama, where it flew in 1865. And we followed that until it finally was actually going to happen, and we were going to have it down here. And because of my involvement in the framing business, I was asked by the archives to see if we could come up with a frame design that would work. I have framed other flags before, but nothing like this one. To my knowledge, there is not a flag frame like this anywhere in the country, and maybe even in the world for that matter. It's been an amazing journey. All of this started back in '06, amazing enough. Our design work began in October last year, a year before, I guess. And we started fooling around with designs before we knew who all was really involved with this thing. Eventually, we were placed in direct contact with the conservator. And from that point on, things started getting real serious real quick. The frame had to be archival so that we would do no damage to the flag at all. And it's extremely large. The first designs we came up with are ones that would lay flat and you could walk around and be able to look in and see it. There wasn't any place under county jurisdiction at that point in time that was large enough space to do that. So we looked then at seeing if we could find a wall that was tall enough we could park it on, and finally we found one at the Central Annex in Robertsdale. 15 feet in the air, and that was further complicated by the fact that we're leaning this thing up against and securing it solidly to a curved wall. And then they threw in another thing, is that once the Bicentennial Park is completed, or not completed, but started, and particularly with the museum opened up, the flag will be moved from Robertsdale to the new Bicentennial Park Museum, which meant that not only did we have to put this up, but we had to take it down later piece by piece and in an archival manner, and replace all of the screws back in the wall where we had mounted it without damage. Thanks to people like Donis and I, and George for that matter, we collaborated hours on end in coming up with the design. We wound up with a grid that gave us a flat surface that was in turn mounted through the existing screw holes that were holding the pylon panels in place on this curved wall. That gave us a rock-solid background to mount the frame on. The materials also had to be totally archival. We wound up selecting what they call a PVC free foam hard foam board. It was a plastic board that did not outgas any materials. That was our background. It was pure white, something that was a great color that we didn't have to paint or anything, so that the flag would be very well displayed once it was hung. We were also looking at the fact that in the environment that we were in, we had to have ultraviolet light protection and to be sealed reasonably well. The environment that we were going to be in and that we will be in the new museum will be atmospheric and humidity controlled, so we didn't have to be too worried about all of that. But we were very concerned about the fact that all the materials that we dealt with needed to be of an archival nature that would not create any damage long-term or short-term to the flag. So all of that being done, we wound up using quarter-inch plexiglass with a UV barrier so that ultraviolet light, either from fluorescent lights or from sunlight, would not cause any damage to the flag. And we built all of our wooden spacers, some of what you see here. There's still a lot of weight involved. When we finally got down to actually building this thing, the county even had to buy well, they had, I think, recently purchased a set of scaffolding that would allow us to have people at multiple levels to lift all of these things in place. And we literally built it from the ground, stacking the materials one on top of the other. The panels were 10 feet by 5 feet, and they sat one on top of the other, and they mounted securely to the background grid that we had built. Then all of the fairly large spacers were mounted around that, and then the plexiglass mounted, and we utilized a U-shaped plastic channel that was wrapped in Mylar film. All of that sounds a little crazy, but in addition to all of that, even though the background material was an archival style material, we still utilized an untreated Mylar film that covered the complete background, so that if the flag touched the background at all, that it would not be damaged by the background. So all of that took a lot of guys to assemble. The primary work was done by Donis and I and George, and it was a couple of days worth of work. We had to work in and around county meetings because it sits in the lobby of the Annex building, of their auditorium. It's been an amazing process from the time that we started ordering materials until it was actually completed. We were still actually working on the covering mechanism, because we have a drape that hangs over the top of it when it's not being viewed for additional protection. We were working on that the day before the actual opening to the public and the official transfer between the government in Illinois and our government facility and people here in Baldwin County, Alabama. Obviously, because this flag had been in a military museum, the military personnel of the National Guard in Illinois and the National Guard folks from the state of Alabama were involved with the turnover ceremony in Robertsdale, Alabama. It's been an amazing thing to go through. This flag, as large as it is, the last conservation work that had been done to it was done by the state of Illinois in the 1980s. The flag itself at that time had been cleaned, and what they call a Stablex backing had been put on it to relieve a lot of the stress from the original stitching. The whole flag, strangely enough, as large as it is, which is roughly 9 feet by 14 feet, is only 12 pounds in weight. It's made from a cotton bunting material, and the entire flag is hung with an 1.5 inch Velcro strip. It's just really amazing. That Velcro strip was attached during the 1980 restoration work that had been done by the state of Illinois, and it hangs beautifully. The installation of the flag, the conservator from New York State came down, was here for 2 days for the actual unrolling of the flag, as it's been hand carried, or car carried, I guess you can more accurately say, down here in a roll, completely covered. She directed the unrolling, and she did the actual mounting of the Velcro of the flag. She was quite afraid of heights, and she was 14 feet off the ground when she was doing all of this, and she loved every minute of it like the rest of us.
On May 10th, 2008, the Blakeley Garrison flag made the final leg of a long journey that brought it from Fort Blakeley on April 9 of 1865 to the state of Illinois, through the state of New York, and back to Baldwin County. On that day, a very somber ceremony took place here in Robertsdale at the Central Annex to dedicate the Blakeley Garrison flag once again to Baldwin County. Representatives of the Alabama National Guard were on hand to receive the flag from reenactors depicting Union soldiers of the same company that captured the flag on April 9 of 1865. Also on hand were reenactors from local units that depicted Confederate soldiers that also took part in the ceremony on that day. Local residents, including people like Jim Mitchell of the Baldwin County Historic Development Commission, were on hand to witness a flag returned that had been gone from the county since 1865. That event marked a culmination of years of work between the Baldwin County Department of Archives and History, the Illinois Governor's Office, the Illinois National Guard Office, and the Alabama National Guard to return the flag to Baldwin County.
Several years ago, Nick Warren and I got together and began to talk about a project, and that project was bringing the Blakeley flag back to Alabama, bringing it back to Baldwin County. Nick had located the flag and told me that he thought there was a possibility we might could get it. And so he and I began to work with the people who had the flag, people here in the county, some of our commissioners and some of the other individuals to try to see what we could do to bring this flag back. And after negotiations with the state of Illinois, with the governor of Illinois, the curators of museums in Illinois, the people here in Baldwin County, we began to look like we could do it. So we decided to see what we could do to raise the funds to see if we could bring this flag back. So we began to contact friends of ours, members of clubs, individuals, people who had ancestors that were in the Civil War. Even a few Yankee friends of mine put in a little money. I mean, we were all very, very proud of the idea of being able to bring this flag back to Baldwin County. And we did. We raised the money. We raised most of the money to conserve the flag. We raised most of the money to case the flag here in the courthouse. And the commissioners was good enough to come along and help us finish it up. And we did the job and got the flag back here. You know, when we dedicated the flag, I mentioned that I had 3 ancestors who fought in the war that were direct great-great-grandfathers. My grandfather Mitchell was in the 6th Alabama Cavalry. He fought at many of the local battles and was finally captured in Franklin, Tennessee. Spent the rest of the war over on Ship Island, right here off the Mississippi coast. My grandfather Lloyd was injured twice, once at Milton, Florida, and once at Nashville, Tennessee. My grandfather Kemp was injured in the battles before Shiloh. I mean, these were people that I'm so proud of, and I'm proud to be able to bring this flag down to dedicate to them for their sacrifices for me and my children and my grandchildren. And now my children and grandchildren will be able to see this flag and maybe grow to appreciate it as much as I have.
April 9th, 1865, federal troops under the command of General Canby and General Steele launched an attack on the Mobile defenses at an area called Fort Blakeley. Fort Blakeley was not what one would envision as a fort as such. It was more like a World War I trench work system that was an integral part to keeping the federal troops out of Mobile. The attack was launched at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon by superior numbers of federal troops. Several positions along the line were quickly overrun. One of the units breaking through was the 8th Illinois Infantry. The individual that was with the 8th Illinois Infantry, Captain Henry Miller, is credited with capturing the Fort Blakeley Garrison flag. We believe from what we can put together and ascertain, Miller, upon capturing the flag, turned it over to his commanding officer, Daniel Sayer, who was a major. The flag ultimately ended up in the care of the Adjutant General's office in Illinois, ultimately ending up in the custody of the Illinois Military History Museum. There is some controversy as to the provenance of the flag. Daniel Sayer apparently kept the flag in his collection for a number of years. The flag was donated to the state of Illinois by his son, Rockwell Sayre, as a memorial to his father's service during the American Civil War. Looking at newspaper accounts, the flag was credited as being captured by the 8th, but it never really says who captured it. Many came to believe that Sayre was the individual that captured the flag. Everything we can find really points back to Miller being at the right place at the right time to have captured the flag. The flag is a 9 by 14 foot storm flag. These flags were authorized by Confederate regulation to be flown over installations and forts that were under Confederate control from 1861 to 1865. The flag itself, we believe, was produced by a Vaughn Company of Mobile. It is a First National variety, and is very common to have been seen throughout the conflict from 1861 to 1865. This flag is made of predominantly cotton, and even though it is large, it's actually lightweight in an incredibly great condition considering its age and the conflict that it ultimately went through. The Fort Blakeley Garrison flag is an American story. It is a story of the brave men that defended it, as well as those brave men that captured it. The flag itself is a mute witness to the tragedies that were to occur the afternoon of April 9th, 1865. One must keep in mind that while Canby orders the attack on Fort Blakeley, Robert E. Lee is surrendering in Virginia. The war is near its close. The flag, I think, speaks volumes as to the conflict from both sides. Those brave men that defended, those brave men that captured it. Around 2001, some Alabama citizens became aware of the existence of the Fort Blakeley Garrison flag in the custody of the Illinois Military History Museum. There were a number of efforts made to have the flag returned to Alabama. During the initial part of the negotiations, there was actually quite a bit of emotion on both sides. Folks in Illinois commented on how many Illinois patriots had been killed in capturing the flags, whereas folks from Alabama talked about how many had died defending the flags. Historians became involved and took more of a middle-of-the-road approach to what was best for the flag, what was morally the right thing to do, and obviously the morally right thing to do would be to return the flag back to where it belonged. A lot of this was approved and sanctioned by Governor Blagojevich of Illinois, who took an interest in saying that these flags be returned back to their states of origin with certain criteria established. And the most important one was for the enjoyment of the general public in the state of origin. It's a connection. The old fabric is a connection for many to their ancestors that served under these flags. The actual arrangements were finally concluded about 2006. The first flag that was returned went to the state of Louisiana and was the Medicine Artillery flag. This is the second of several other flags that will be repatriated to southern states over the next 5 to 10 years. On May 10th, 2008, we did dedicate the flag here at the Robertsdale Annex. We had participants ranging from living historians and reenactors that portrayed both the 8th Illinois Infantry as well as the Confederate forces that were in the Blakeley trenches. We had representatives of the Alabama National Guard. We even had some folks from Illinois come down to observe the last trek of this flag's over a century's journey back and forth between Alabama to Illinois and then back to Alabama. Many of the participants of the day's activities had ancestors that were in the Blakeley trenches. So this was a rather emotional moment for them to see the flag finally come home.